The movie opens on a deserted road, surrounded by trees and silence. A woman drives with an expression of pure despair. She's wounded, blood running down her arm, and the steering wheel nearly slips from her hands. On the passenger seat lies a gun. In the back, a heavy backpack barely stays in place. It's stuffed with money. This much is clear right away. The fear on her face isn't about being lost in the night. It's the fear of someone running from something, or someone far worse. Suddenly, a tire bursts. It wasn't a driving mistake. It even feels planned. With no other option, she grabs the gun and the backpack and stumbles alone down the road. She's barely able to keep herself from falling, but doesn't stop. Nearby, another story unfolds. Her friends, John, Paul, Leonard, and Travis, are driving to a secluded cabin in the woods for a weekend of hunting and relaxing. They're laughing, carefree, as if the world belongs to them. Until, on a sharp curve, tragedy strikes. They hit the woman. The impact is brutal. She dies instantly. Stunned, they get out, trying to process what happened. Paul, the most sensible, insists on calling the police immediately. But before they decide, John opens the woman's backpack and everything changes. Inside are piles of cash, at least $1 million. John argues that if they call the police, they'll be accused of her death and lose the money. Paul protests, insisting it's wrong, but little by little, John convinces Leonard and Travis. Fear mixes with temptation and they give in. They hide the woman's body in the woods near the cabin, planning to split the money. But before they can leave, a patrol car arrives. The officer is looking for the woman. John, calm but tense, claims they stopped because of car trouble. The officer checks the abandoned car and returns with questions. Their truck works perfectly, so why the story? When the officer asks to check inside, John hesitates. Then, in a flash, he pulls the woman's gun and shoots. The officer drops instantly. Silence falls. No one can believe what just happened. John, visibly shaken, insists the officer would have ruined everything, that this was necessary. Paul, horrified, wants to leave the body behind. Leonard argues there's no turning back now. They drive to the cabin, a lonely place deep in the woods, the kind of place where secrets stay buried. Paul stays quiet, weighed down by guilt. Leonard and Travis dig a grave for the woman while John obsessively counts the money, his eyes gleaming. He secretly takes Paul's phone, keeping control. Paul notices his phone missing and borrows Travis's to call his wife. She mistakes him for Travis, causing a flicker of suspicion, but Paul brushes it off. Hearing his daughter's voice tightens his chest with guilt. Meanwhile, someone else arrives at the woman's abandoned car. A man named Sidney Niels runs a finger over dried blood and even tastes it, calm, unsettling. Without hesitation, he drives toward the cabin as if he already knows the way. When the friends see him approaching, John draws his gun, demanding answers. Sidney smiles, introduces himself, and says he only wants the bag. If they hand it over, no one gets hurt. The friends exchange nervous glances. How does he know about the bag? How did he get here so quickly? John orders Leonard to search him. No weapons, nothing at all. Sidney, calm as ever, repeats his demand. He knows details about each of them, names, secrets no stranger should know. His composure, even with a gun pointed at him, rattles them. Suddenly, branches snap in the woods. Thinking Sidney has backup, Paul and Leonard investigate. They find a hunting trap and a terrified man nearby. They bring him back. John accuses him of being Sidney's accomplice. The man swears he's innocent, just a local with a wife and daughter. John doesn't believe him. He orders Leonard to kill the man, forcing him at gunpoint. Leonard hesitates but pulls the trigger. The guilt crushes him instantly. Sidney watches calmly. "You killed an innocent man," he says coldly. "You liked it. This wasn't your first time, was it?" John says nothing. The tension spikes when Travis suggests giving Sidney some money to end it. John refuses. Sidney, unfazed, demands the entire bag or nothing. Then he drops a bombshell. "Why don't you tell your friends what really happened in California?" John freezes. Paul demands answers. Finally, John confesses. Years ago, on a work trip, he had an affair with a woman. When she threatened to expose him unless he paid her, he panicked and killed her, then dismembered her body to hide the crime. The group is horrified. Their friendship shatters instantly. Leonard, already guilt-ridden, snaps. He points a gun at John, screaming that he killed an innocent man because of him. John coldly replies that Leonard did it by choice. The words break Leonard completely. Chaos erupts. Travis knocks John unconscious, ending the standoff for now. Later, John woke up tied up in the basement. Beside him was Sidney, looking as if he belonged to the place. Upstairs, Paul and Treves argued about what to do with the cursed bag of money. Paul suggested hiding it in the woods until they could find a way out. Ever since that money appeared, everything had gone downhill. Friendship, trust, peace of mind. all shattered. In the basement, Sydney started planting doubts in John's mind. He whispered that the others were plotting against him, planning to take the money and leave him behind. He claimed nobody trusted him anymore. John listened silently, his anger burning. He stormed upstairs, ready to settle everything his way. But he didn't get the chance. Leonard pulled the trigger before John could speak, and John collapsed to the floor. Believing he'd ended it all, Leonard, in tears, went down to the basement and broke down like a child. Sydney coldly reminded him that he'd spent weeks saying he didn't want innocent blood on his hands. Yet here he was, killing a friend. No amount of tears, Sydney said, could wash away that kind of guilt. Meanwhile, Paul was already in the forest, looking for a safe place to hide the money. He found a tree marked by an old bullet hole and shoved his backpack inside. But fate loves a twist. John, shot but not dead, slowly regained consciousness. Realizing he'd become a target of his own group, he crawled behind a tree and waited, planning revenge. Back in the basement, Sydney turned his manipulations toward Treves, asking if he still trusted Paul. When Treves said yes, Sydney smirked and revealed the truth. Paul was ready to disappear with the money and start a new life, leaving them all behind. Treves told Sydney to shut up, but he kept pressing. "Give me my money," Sydney said calmly, "and no one else has to die." Neither Treves nor Leonard had figured out who Sydney really was, and that ignorance would cost them dearly. Paul eventually returned to the cabin, only to find John waiting with a gun pointed at him. John demanded to know where the money was hidden, promising the next shot wouldn't miss. Defeated, Paul agreed. As they walked, Paul cleverly led John through a path filled with bear traps. Suddenly, snap, a trap clamped down on John's leg. Screaming in pain, he dropped his weapon. Paul, cold as ice, picked it up and walked away without looking back. Back at the cabin, Paul told Leonard and Treves what happened. Leonard, torn by guilt, insisted they couldn't leave John behind. He was still their friend. Sydney, calm as ever, reminded them they still had a choice: give him the money and walk away alive. But Treves had reached his breaking point. He raised his gun. Sydney smirked, saying, "I know who you are, Treves. I know your lies, and I know about the stabs you gave your own friends." Before he could say another word, Treves shot him straight in the forehead. Just then, a strange, piercing noise filled the cabin. Everyone clutched their heads in pain. Believing Sydney was finally dead, they decided to leave, though guilt kept pulling them back toward John. But John had already escaped the trap and was silently following them. Along the way, he found Paul's gun on the ground and picked it up. Near the tree where the money was hidden, Paul confronted Treves, asking if he was the real father of his daughter. Treves hesitated, then admitted it was true. Furious, Paul pointed his gun at Treves, but held back. Instead, he demanded they split the money and go their separate ways forever. Far away, Sydney opened his eyes as if nothing had happened. The bullet wound was gone. He wasn't human, and he wasn't done. At the tree, tensions exploded again. John shot Treves after a brief standoff. Treves froze. Paul hid nearby, waiting for his chance. Leonard tried reasoning with John, saying they were still friends and didn't need more bloodshed. He dropped his weapon and approached with the money, hoping to calm him down. But when Leonard saw Sydney standing behind John, pale with fear, he froze. John misunderstood the reaction and fired again. Leonard fell dead. Now only John and Paul remained. Sydney, unfazed, dragged Leonard's body to a tree and calmly collected his blood in a syringe, revealing the truth. He was a vampire. He mocked the men, saying they were like dogs fighting over scraps. At that moment, Paul saw his chance. He shot John. John, thinking Paul was dead, relaxed. But Paul, badly wounded, wasn't done yet. As John reached for the money, Paul fired again, killing him, or at least leaving him too injured to escape. Sydney stepped in slowly, as if nothing unusual had happened. He knelt beside Paul and offered his own blood, promising immortality as a reward for survival. He mocked humanity's greed, saying people would betray anyone for money. Why not give one of them a second chance? Paul drank. Sydney, carrying the money, vanished into the night. By sunrise, he left the full briefcase in the car of a mysterious woman we'd seen before. She arrived minutes later, picked it up without hesitation, and prepared to start the cycle again. On the roadside, two strangers spotted the abandoned bag, their eyes gleaming with greed. We know what will happen next. They're about to take the bait. In the finale, Paul was alive, but no longer human. He was now a vampire. Sydney's plan had been larger than anyone imagined. He'd found a way to feed without getting his hands dirty, letting people destroy each other over money, revenge, and betrayal before he harvested what remained. A dark, efficient, and disturbingly clever hunt. So that's it. Hope you enjoy the story. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more videos.